Hey guys, so today in class, you guys are practicing for your FRQ, which is tomorrow. And I posted this FRQ on Google Classroom, and we're going to go over explain it now so you can see how, on track you are with what you put. So let me reread it. It says, Arlene wanted to increase the productivity of the clerical staff in her plant. She thought painting their cubicles blue, her favorite color, would increase their rate of work completion, but that painting the cubicles yellow, a color that was harsh, would have either no effect or might even slow down the clerical staff's rate of completion. To test this idea, she had the work cubicles in the sales department painted blue and those in the public relations department painted yellow. Then she kept track of how many projects each department completed in the next 3 months. For the 2-month period following the painting, the sales clerical staff dramatically outperformed the public relations clerical staff in a number of projects completed. So it says, what's the focal behavior of the study and how is it operationally defined? Well, the behavior, it seems like she's trying to study, is work completion. Of course, when it comes to asking questions about how it's operationally defined, it's basically you're pulling words from the FRQ. It's like, how did they define in the prompt what work completion is? And it's kind of like a search and find. Work completion was how many projects each department completed in 3 months. That is how they defined work completion. So the focal behavior, work completion. How is it defined? The number of projects that each department completed in 3 months. What is the hypothesis? Well, she's hypothesizing that the paint of the room, blue, would increase work completion, and that yellow either had no effect or negatively affected their work completion. The independent variable is the color of the room. That is what is being manipulated. Remember, independent variable is the color that is being manipulated, or whatever is being manipulated. In this example, it's the color, either blue or yellow rooms. The dependent variable kind of is going along to what the first prompt is saying. The dependent variable is like how much work they're completing. And then how is it measured? How many projects they did after the 3 months. What variables are being controlled? I know it sounds repetitive, but it's like asking different ways to see if you know words and definitions. So how are variables being controlled? Well, the sales department is going to get the blue color, which is kind of like that is the sales department is like the experimental group because they're going to get the independent variable, which is blue. And then since she thinks that yellow has no effect, that she's using yellow as the control. So the variable that is that is not given is blue, so they get yellow, and then it's the experimental group. Okay. Did the research measure what Arlene thought she measured? Justify your answer. Well, you could go either way here. I feel like she kept you could say yes, it did measure because there was a change in the performance. The sales clerical staff dramatically outperformed the other one. You could also say no, it was the placebo effect. People worked harder because they thought the blue was going to make them work harder. You could have also talked about in the weekend's notes that I gave, the long video that I gave, I talked about the Hawthorne effect. Well, the Hawthorne effect is a confounding variable. Hawthorne effect is you will act differently if you know you're being watched. So just being in an experiment is a confounding variable. It was after that Hawthorne electric plant of the bosses measured people's performance. Well, if your boss is measuring your performance more closely, you might change how you perform. And so, which is going to mess up the experiment because it looks like it's from the room, and really they're just walking by and they're like, oh, look at the sales clerical staff not working, or do working. So you could say that she didn't do anything because it didn't prove anything because that might have been a confounding variable. Okay, so the rest of this are some, here's another one at the very bottom. I don't know if you got to this. It says, in a study of power and self-image, participants were not told the true purpose of the study. Instead, they believed they were participating in a business simulation. researchers randomly assigned participants to either a high power or low power condition. In the high power condition, participants recalled a time when they had power over others. And in the low power condition, they recalled a time when others had power over them. Participants were asked to adjust the height in centimeters on an electronic graphical image or an avatar of themselves to reflect their personal appearance. Results indicated a statistically significant difference in participants' perceptions of their own height across two conditions. Participants in the high power condition created taller self-images, where the average was 6 centimeters, with a standard deviation of 1.5 centimeters. Then participants in a low power condition, whose average was 4 centimeters, with a standard deviation of 1. Describe the levels of the independent variable. So this has given people some problems before because they're like, levels? Well, there's technically 2 independent variables. It's like, does the power condition affect the height of the avatar? That's your independent and dependent variable, but the independent variable is broken down into high and low power. So the levels of the independent variable is the power, high power and low power. Describe how the researchers measured the dependent variable. Remember, the dependent variable is like, how tall did you make your avatar? So how did they measure it? By the height. What did I do? I did something. Let me go back. There we go. The height of the avatar in centimeters is how they measured the dependent variable. And then create a bar graph illustrating the results of the study. I didn't do that down here because it's hard to make a bar graph in a document like this. But basically, you need to have something to the effect of something like this. So the height of the centimeters, like the avatar centimeters. And then we have low power. They had their height at like 4 centimeters, but high power conditioned, they had their height, the average was 6 centimeters? I don't know if you can read this right there. So really simple bar graph. Low power, they had their avatar smaller, and high power had their avatar at 6 inches. Make sure if they give you numbers in the prompt that you use those numbers, especially when you're drawing a graph. They said 4, they said 4 and 6 as the average. So make sure that you refer to those if you're drawing a graph. It says, explain why the researchers can conclude there's a cause and effect relationship between the independent and dependent variable. Simple. Cause and effect can only be shown through an experiment. If this was a survey or a case study or naturalist observation, they couldn't say cause effect. But because there was an experimental group, control group, independent variables and dependent variables that were measured, you can now say, thinking of a low power situation will cause you to have a smaller avatar. And those of you that had a high power condition will cause you to have a taller avatar. Explain what statistical significance means in the context of the study. Statistical significance means, you can talk about it in 2 ways. It's the same thing. It's just how you go about phrasing it. You can say 95% of the results are not due to chance. That's what it means to be statistically significant. 95% of the results are not due to chance. Or you can say only 5% of the results are due to chance. So basically, there's like real science happening. My results are not based on luck of the draw. It's like an actual cause effect. So to be statistically significant, either you can say 95% of the results are not due to chance, or only 5% of the results are due to chance. And last one, explain why debriefing would be necessary in the study is because the participants were not told the true purpose of the study. You kind of messed with their like self-image of themselves. They need to know that was part of the experiment. You need to tell them what the experiment was truly over. You need to debrief them so they know the true purpose of the study. So remember, tomorrow in your FRQ, we got to follow SODAs. Well, tomorrow is just soda. We're going to get rid of the last S. But if you look at my board, on the right-hand side of my board, there's a pink poster that's always going to be there. S means space out your answers. So if this was your answers, basically, you would put a space between all of your answers. Ooh, hello. That's what S means. O, answer it in this order. Do not like have like do rearrange where it's like, oh, you know what, I'm going to answer this part up here. No, 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 no. You're not going to do that. So those are pretty simple. D means you define. I would on this, it says describe the levels of the independent variable. I would first define the independent variable and then tell me the levels. Remember to write and complete sentences. Don't just say describe the levels of independent variable, high and low power. Nope. You can say the levels of the independent variable is or are, in this example, high power and low power situations. Don't write in incomplete sentences. And then you apply it. This one's really easy to apply because it's basically pulling words out from up here. Same thing here. Don't say like a hypothesis of something that we talked about in class. And just always make sure to like answer in terms of the prompt. So if it says like, what's a confounding variable? Don't just give me a random studies confounding variable. Give it a confounding variable from the prompt. So don't think too far out of the box there. So space out your answer in order. If you see a word, please define it and then apply it the way that it's asking you to. Pretty simple. And please write in complete sentences. You can bullet point, just write in complete sentences. All right. I will see you guys when I get back. Have a great afternoon.